Rachel Scott.
Gabe Sterling, a top Georgia election official, said the threats against state workers have gone too far.
Someone's going to get shot. Someone's going to get killed.
The committee will hear from a target of those attacks. Shay Moss, a Georgia election worker who counted ballots on election night and received death threats, falsely accused of altering the results. In her opening statement, claiming people showed up at my grandmother's home trying to bust the door down and conduct a citizen's arrest of my mom and me.
In Texas today, the Department of Public Safety will hold more hearings in the Uvalde school shooting, including how Uvalde District Police Chief Pete Arredondo handled law enforcement's response.
Now, as Texas lawmakers prepare for another round of hearings, embattled Chief Arredondo expected to speak to at least one committee investigating, but legislators won't say when. Arredondo has defended his actions in interviews, saying officers didn't hesitate to save lives, but had to adjust to what they faced.
ABC's Maria Villarreal in Uvalde. The price of gas has now slipped to below $5 a gallon on average, but inflation is still cutting into Americans' bottom line.
American consumers are anxious. They are cutting back. And while this can help drive prices lower, it also hits the economy. We're a consumer-driven economy. 70% of our economic growth comes from how we behave. If we pull back, so does the economy.
ABC's Rebecca Jarvis says a recent Wall Street Journal poll of 53 leading economists shows 44% chance of recession within the next year. Kellogg has announced it is splitting into 3 companies, one focused on cereals, one focused on snacks and frozen foods, and one focused on plant-based foods. You're listening to ABC News.
Was your business hurt in the years of the pandemic? Have you had a serious decline in revenue since 2019? Was your business partly or fully shut down by the government? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you may be eligible to receive up to $26,000 per employee. How? By taking advantage of the Employer Retention Tax Credit, a fully funded tax credit created to help businesses during these difficult times. The experts at ERTC Rebate Masters are ready to help you get the money you're owed. The pre-qualification is absolutely free. Even if you got PPP money, this is more money that may be owed to you. Repayment is not necessary. The money is all yours. Get your free pre-qualification now. Call 844-333-ERTC or 844-333-3782. Take advantage of this tax credit while you can. Call ERTC Rebate Masters today at 844-333-ERTC and claim what is rightfully yours. That's 844-333-ERTC. That's 844-333-ERTC. 844-333-3782.
With large parts of the country facing brutal heat this week, there are warnings again about the dangers of leaving children in cars after a 5-year-old died in Texas.
A woman focused on preparing for her 8-year-old daughter's birthday party stepped out of the car in her driveway, forgetting that her 5-year-old son was in the back seat. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez says the child knew how to open the doors of his family's car, but
we believe this is a rental vehicle, so perhaps the child wasn't as familiar with it.
By the time the woman realized her mistake, 2 to 3 hours later, her son had died inside the car. Jim Ryan, ABC News, Dallas.
New concerns about women and COVID after the release of a recent study. ABC's Mark Rummelard has the details.
The study from researchers with Johnson & Johnson analyzed 1.3 million patients and found women are more than 20% more likely to develop long COVID. The researchers note one possible reason for the disparity could have to do with the differences in immune systems between men and women. Data collection, though, could be complicated by the fact that women could be at higher risk of contracting COVID in certain professions, such as teaching and nursing, and the study didn't factor for the possibility that one gender may have a higher propensity to report symptoms than the other. Mark Remillard, ABC News.
Gone in Hong Kong, the iconic Jumbo floating restaurant. It had been floating in the harbor for decades, but capsized when it was being towed out into the South China Sea. This is ABC News.
70% of the Fortune 100 choose Zoom. With phone, chat, workspaces, apps, events, and video in a single platform, Zoom powers all your communications. Large enterprises, small businesses, and individuals use the secure Zoom platform to enable new ways of working, learning, hosting events, and supporting their customers. And now you can save 15% on meetings, chat, and phone with a Zoom United bundle. Visit zoom.com/bundle. Zoom, how the world connects.
Sherry Preston, ABC News.
Today we'll see temperatures in the upper 80s and the lower 90s. It's going to be a lovely day for any outdoor activities because our dew points will be low, so it's actually going to feel tolerable. That number will climb as we head into tomorrow. Highs will be in the mid to upper 90s. It's going to feel like the upper 90s, and we do have the chance of seeing showers and thunderstorms develop late Wednesday afternoon and evening. I'm meteorologist Peter Sherwood in the Weather Center.
And it is warming up nicely, 66 degrees currently. Last time I mentioned it was 63, so it's jumping pretty fast up to a high of 94 today, and some hot, humid summer-like weather on this first day of summer. Let's increase our attitudes more positively and say, boy, I love this hot weather. Instead of, boy, it's going to be a terrible summer, and we can abide by these things and live through it.
It's time now for My Great America with Jim and Butch, a conversation about positive things about this great country. And now here are Jim and Butch.
Well, good morning, Butch. Welcome back to the Blue Room.
I am so glad to be back, Jim. I was flying the WCAB flag there at the Faith and Freedom Road to the Majority Conference at the gargantuan Gaylord Hotel in Nashville, Tennessee.
That's a nice one.
It's beautiful with the fountains and the koi fish that are in there and the like. And I was there representing WCAB.
Wow.
And I sat right in between. To my left was the national political reporter for National Public Radio, NPR, very liberal platform.
Yes.
To my right was the national political reporter and White House correspondent for the Associated Press.
Boy.
And right there in the middle was WCAB Rutherfordton, North Carolina, My Great America with Jim and Butch. And you have no idea the joy it gave me, again, to have One American News, Fox, NBC, the local affiliates, ABC, CBS, all of these national platforms. When I'd boldly go to them and introduce myself, and they'd say, and who are you with? And I'd say with a strength that I think God gave me, I'd say, WCAB.
The conservative voice of the foothills.
The conservative voice of the foothills, and I'm just here as an emissary because the person that ought to be here is Jim Bishop.
Oh.
You know, next year, let's see if there's not a way to make that happen. Now, Jim, one of the things that I did, of course, there were many speakers, Nikki Haley, Joni Ernst, of course, the number 45, Donald Trump, and it was, I'll talk a little bit in just a minute, but I brought back a little sound actuality, and I want you to...
let's hear that.
I want you to guess who... Well, Jim, that was a little soundbite that I brought back. Number 45, Donald J. Trump, spoke for about an hour and a half, and they had to adjust the schedule. But I think part of what took place there is he knew he was in front of a friendly crowd. There weren't people pointing rifles at him. And at one point, I think the most raucous response came when he asked a question, and I'm not sure if it was a rhetorical one or not. He asked the question, do you believe I should run in 2024? And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air happened right there in the room.
Well, I'm not endorsing him at this point by any stretch, but he says and does and works toward the things that we as conservative Christians believe in. He believes in the Constitution. He believes in God is in our hearts and our lives, and we should live that way. And people like what he's saying, and he proved the 4 years he was there that he believed that and he worked toward that end.
You know, folks, I just want to go ahead and say this, and they don't know that I'm going to say this, but it's a strong and deep encouragement from my heart. You need to be involved in the local Republican Party, the authorized official Republican Party. I had the opportunity to have a conversation when I flew back in at the baggage claim with Michael Whatley. Michael Whatley is the head of the Republican Party in North Carolina. The strength of the North Carolina story is so well regarded and known around the country. The president, Donald Trump, knew that North Carolina needed to be in his column, and through hard work, a lot of phone calls, a lot of door knocking, a lot of advocacy, that's exactly what took place. Now, I want to tell you, the tip of the spear for advocacy here in North Carolina is North Carolina Faith and Freedom. Jason Williams, a dear personal friend, he's been on My Great America with Jim and Butch before, as has Tim Head, who's the national executive director. If you're looking for a way, after you become engaged with the local Republican Party, to be involved in a more significant level, I want to encourage you, become part of Faith and Freedom. It's a wonderful organization. Ralph Reed started that. He and I first knew each other in the late 80s and early 90s when we were both vice presidents at the Christian Broadcasting Network and Regent University, out there with Pat Robertson as our boss. They're doing incredibly good work. And when you looked at the conference, it was a significant amalgamation of lots of national Republican leaders. One of the comments that the president made was, we believe that the United States of America is the greatest and most virtuous republic in the history of the world, and we're going to keep it that way. Is our nation perfect? Of course not. But the principles at the heart of America are perfect. Now is no time to replace those ideals. Now is the time to apply them more fully to move our country forward and upward towards our glorious destiny. The only way to bring out the best in America is to believe in America. That was said by former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott made this comment, Jim. He reinforced, when you adhere to the principles in the gospel, human flourishing cannot be stopped. While speakers didn't shy away from acknowledging the many challenges America's facing, a message of hope, Jim, was evident through all of the speakers there. For example, Iowa Senator Joni Ernst emphasized, hope is not lost. As Scripture teaches us, when our faith is being tested, our perseverance grows, we strengthen our character, and we have hope. And then finally, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who received an award there, said, I believe that we will restore the greatness of America, not because of any great American leader, not because of any great rule of law, but because of you. We will do it with joy in our hearts, we will do it with a smile on our face, and we will do it with a relentlessness that is worthy of our nation's founding. And then Ralph Reed concluded the comments by saying, we have a very big job to do, and this is true for Rutherford County as well. We have 143 days to do it. We're focused on November, and we're going to do our job. Now, I want to encourage you, if you want to watch highlights from the Road to Majority 2022, you can go to foxnation.com, and you can view them for free for 30 days using the code FAITH, all uppercase, FAITH. So for our listeners to My Great America with Jim and Butch, if you want to see highlights and feel like you were a part of the conference, go to foxnation, FOXNATION.com. You can view for 30 days for free, by using the code FAITH.
You know, as I was listening, you read some of those. How can any true American not believe and follow that kind of ideal for what we need to work for? How can you refute that?
Well, you know, in Scripture it tells us that there will come a point when people exchange the truth for a lie, Jim. And here's what I truly believe. I believe that there are people who are uttering lies and invectives and all kinds of caustic communication that in their heart of hearts believe what they're speaking is true. Why? Because Scripture tells us, 2 Thessalonians 2 talks about a great falling away in the church, tells us there will come a point where people will believe a lie before they believe truth. And it actually says, and this is frightening and sobering, that God will give them over to that lie, that God will send a deceiving influence. When somebody repeatedly rejects truth, Jim, it's not just a debate and it's not just an argument. They are darkening and hardening their heart every time they reject what the truth is. And I'm going to make what I call a penetrating look into the totally obvious. Our lives as Americans and the stability of our nation as a harbinger and a light of democracy in this grand republic experiment that we have is not better today than it was 2 years ago. It's not. And you can ask any single mom who's trying to figure out, where am I going to get baby food? You can ask any elder on a fixed income who's saying, I just don't have the money to get the gas to make that trip today. You can ask any small business that is dealing with the realities of escalating costs, employees they want to take care of, in an environment where we have a whole slice of the population that has stepped over the Rubicon and says, I don't want to work. I just want to wait for my next check to show up. I mean, Jim, we have got the confluence of a lot of toxic rivers that are coming together that are creating a tsunami of problems, but we've got to have the hope to understand, as it says in Scripture, the heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord, like rivers of water. He turns it however he will. But I will tell you this, the living God will not inhabit the praises of his people, will not go before them as a rear guard and a vanguard if they're people who cower in fear. God has called us to run to the roar, run to the battle. You know, the Battle of the Bulge in World War II, just a little bit of history here, the Germans pushed into what they thought was the softest part of that Allied line. And the reason it's called the Battle of the Bulge is that they pushed and it bulged, but you know what it didn't do? It didn't break. And people didn't hunker down in the foxhole and say, let's see if we can survive the bombardment. No. Young 18 and 19-year-olds, as the youngest, grabbed their carbines and did what? They charged across the field. Why? Because they were going to hold the line. They were going to hold the line.
Yes.
So as a culture, we may have a bulge that's happening here against conservative values and the things that God predicated this nation and created a foundation for this nation to be. But we're not going to break. And we sing a song at my church, Word of Faith Fellowship. We're not bowing, we're not bending, we're not giving up. And if we persevere to the end, we'll be saved. So it's not a time for people to cower, get sucked down the toilet of social media feeds that are talking about how bad things are. Get your light. Pull it out from under the bushel.
Yes.
Charge into the fray. It's time. You know, it's our responsibility in this season, in this time, in this day and age, to make sure that future generations have the opportunity to live biblically, Jim. It's our responsibility. So get out of your comfort zone, cry out to Jesus, find out what he's equipped you to do and be, and do it.
And there are more and more interruptions and things to take us away from the minds of what we designate as our Sunday morning worship hours for churches across the nation that designate 10, 11, 12 o'clock as worship times. And more distractions to pull our time away from that, such as experience with it didn't happen last night, but you were at the meeting last night in Spindale where they were trying to bring the liquor laws into 10 o'clock before worship hour.
Right. And you know what, Jim? One of the great things about the country that we live in is that we have the opportunity, when we take the opportunity, to go and reflect what a republic and what a democracy, representative democracy, is all about. So there was discussion in Spindale about the possibility of pushing back the hours on Sunday that people can buy alcohol from 12 o'clock until 10. Now, there's a whole history I won't go into right now. The blue laws, you remember, in this country, and the history of that, the origin of that was really trying to institutionalize more of a Sabbath for people, to try to create a sense of, you're working hard all week, let's have one day that doesn't have you yielding to the temptation of making it just like any other day. So the origins historically are there, and that was really the impetus early on. So I went to the meeting, and of course Lou here from WCAB, who was on the front page of the Daily Courier, and we expect some additional articles, that's all I'm going to say, about the station in the days ahead. Lou was there, but they were going to vote in. Well, you know what? Rutherfordton has done it. Forest City's done it. So maybe we just need to do it because that's what everybody's doing. So I was given the opportunity to make public comments, and I'm not going to make all of them right now, but I will tell you in a nutshell what I said. I got up and I said, the National Alcohol Beverage Control Association has said that excessive alcohol use led to more than 140,000 deaths and 3.6 million years of potential life lost each year in the United States from 2017 to 20. It shortened the lives of those who died by an average of 26 years. Further, excessive drinking was responsible for 1 in 10 deaths among working age adults aged 20 to 64. The economic cost of excessive alcohol consumption in 2017 was estimated at $249 billion, or $2.05 a drink. So I gave that data, I gave those statistics. I talked about the long-term and short-term health risks, which include injuries, crashes, falls, drownings, homicide, suicide, sexual assault, partner violence, alcohol poisoning, risky sexual behavior, miscarriages, stillbirths, high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, liver disease, digestive problems, cancer of the breast, mouth, throat, esophagus, voice box, liver, colon, and rectum, weakening of the immune system, learning and memory problems, mental health problems, including depression, social problems, including job-related problems and unemployment, alcohol use disorders, and much more. I just laid it out in front of them, and then reinforced what Isaiah 5:11 says, woe, judgment is coming to those who rise early in the morning to pursue intoxicating drink, who stay up late in the night till wine inflames them. I believe the most powerful part maybe of the story was, I said, listen, late in my life I became an alcoholic. So the productive, engaged, pursuing Jesus person, you see, had a season where, because of the just incredible pain and sadness I was feeling about a divorce and my family blowing up, I found my solace not in Jesus, but I found it in a bottle. And I said, I was one of those people sitting out in front of a store wondering and cursing under my breath, why aren't they open yet? So when you make it personal,
Yes,
Jim,
yes.
People can disagree with our arguments, they can disagree with our philosophy, they can disagree with our faith, but they can't change your testimony, and that was my testimony last night. So when it came time for a vote, not one of the town council members would even proffer the vote, and it was a small little thing. I mean, what's the big deal? 12 o'clock to 10 o'clock. But for me, I know God said to go, and I did.
Well, we can see it from a distance. Those of us who have not been influenced by alcoholism, I've seen it from some of my uncles, but you've seen it firsthand, so you can talk with authority on what it really means and how it can really affect somebody. Those of us who see it from a distance and don't like it is one thing, but somebody seeing it from firsthand and don't like it has a lot of validity.
Right, and you know what? For the 18.5 million, it's estimated, alcoholics in the United States, and it may be more, who quietly and publicly suffer, we've got to do what we can, Jim, not to legislate morality, but to legislate things that make for a safer community. And the data, I actually got a report that was done by the National Alcohol and Beverage Association. It made it very clear that the more availability you have in a municipality for alcohol, the more crime, accidents, and the likes. It's not just correlation. They believe it's causation. So in ways, whatever your passion is, whatever your heart is, you know what, there were only 2 of us that showed up for that meeting last night. And you can make your voice known. You can run for office. There are boards in Rutherford County that are looking for board members. So don't complain. You have no right, no credibility to complain about how things are if you're not willing to get out of your comfort zone and get out there and make democracy, make this grand American experience real for you. You know, it's time for us to quit complaining, Jim. We got to quit jawboning. You know, as we often say, you and I say, let's suit up, show up, get to work.
On another note, some folks did step up to the plate last night over at Forest City to voice their opinion on an excessive rate of tax increases. It didn't pay off. They lost the vote 4-1. 4 positive believed the taxes should be raised that much. 1 voted against. But the fact the place was full, a lot of people voted against. This is what it's going to do to me, my business, my family, my community. Let's don't do it. So they were speaking up anyway. They were out fighting for a cause, although this particular one they lost.
Well, and you know what? You've heard the metaphor of the frog in the kettle.
Yes.
You know, the frog goes in the kettle and the water is cool and then the water is tepid. You know, the fire is turned up and it just slowly is there. And the frog just becomes more adaptive and tolerant. And then all of a sudden the frog is boiling and it's a dinner for somebody if you eat bullfrogs. You know, or just the incipient nature of things, the creeping culture. I mean, Jim, who would have believed? I mean, I was born in the late 50s. Who would have believed that anybody in their right mind, regardless of their religious persuasion, would think it's okay to have drag queens in front of young children reading books about how you can change your gender and be fluid? I mean, nobody would believe it. But if we're not putting our stake in the ground, we are going to find that, you know, we sing a song, when the foundations are being destroyed, what will the righteous do? They run to the God of their salvation. We know what we need to do. We know what we need to do. And it's not a time to be tired, depressed, discouraged. It's a time for us to fight and do it with integrity and always with love that's leading. But I love people that I look at and I will say, I love you. You're going to know it by my behavior. But what you're doing is not right. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure it's stopped.
And it's not time for us to say, let somebody else do it. Let somebody else do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to get involved. It's time to get involved, folks.
Exactly. Now, Jim, you know what? You and I love it, and it got hotter while we were in here because I got that. I have a little Southern Baptist in me sometimes, you know. Listen to this. When Democrats used to be different than they are today, this was a speech that was given in February 1961. I'll end with this. John F. Kennedy stated, "This country was founded by men and women who were dedicated or came to be dedicated for 2 propositions. First, a strong religious conviction, and secondly, a recognition that this conviction could flourish only a system of freedom. I think it is appropriate that we pay tribute to this great constitutional principle, which is enshrined in the First Amendment of the Constitution, the principle of religious independence, of religious liberty, of religious freedom. But I think it is also important that we pay tribute and acknowledge another great principle, and that is the principle of religious conviction. Religious freedom has no significance unless it is accompanied by conviction, and therefore the Puritans and the Pilgrims of my own section of New England, the Quakers of Pennsylvania, the Catholics of Maryland, the Presbyterians of North Carolina, the Methodists, and the Baptists who came later, all shared these 2 great traditions which, like silver threads, have run through the warp and woof of American history. No man enters upon the office to which I've succeeded can fail to recognize how every president of the United States has placed special reliance upon his faith in God. Every president has taken comfort and courage when told that the Lord will be with thee. He will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Fear not, neither thou be dismayed." While they came from a wide variety of religious backgrounds and held a wide variety of religious beliefs, each of our presidents, perhaps up until now, Jim, in his own way has placed a special trust in God. Those who were strongest intellectually were also strongest spiritually. He ended by saying the guiding principle and prayer of this nation has been here forever and is now and shall ever be. In God we trust. Who was that? John F. Kennedy. A what? a Democrat.
Yes, yes. It's come a long ways.
Our nation is made great when we get involved, we hear from God, and we do His will, Jim, and that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to do that every Tuesday and Thursday here at WCAB.
And let me remind folks, if you want to hear this session again or any of the other sessions, you can go to our website. After about 30 minutes, this will be uplifted onto our website at www.wcab59.com.
And My Great America with Jim and Butch on Facebook. It's a Facebook group. You can find it there as well as past episodes.
God bless America.
God bless America.
Thank you for joining us for My Great America with Jim and Butch. Join us each Tuesday and Thursday morning at 9:05 for this enlightening program on 100.9 FM and 590 AM. It's My Great America with Jim and Butch.